it's been clicked.
Okay, we are live. Hello, folks. Welcome to the Node.js meeting for today, April 10th, 2024. We are starting. Do we have any public announcement, people, that you want to make?
Oh, yeah, I guess so. I mentioned this on the thread for this meeting, but the package maintenance team met yesterday and we had a very productive meeting. And we went through the meeting notes from the Collab Summit about that topic and reviewed the various goals that were in the notes and kind of consolidated them down into I guess 3 bullet points, which were very brief. And so I opened a PR for that, and I linked the PR in the thread. And yeah, one of the things we talked about when we were doing that was like trying to separate product requirements from like goals. So, you know, it doesn't mention something. There are lots of things that it could have mentioned that it doesn't, because that's like, well, if we decide to build a product, then these are product requirements. But we're not necessarily like the goals shouldn't necessitate building a product. Like maybe we solve it in other means and documentation by pointing to existing libraries that are out there. Who knows? The goal should be written expansively enough that it doesn't dictate what the solution should be. So that's what's there. And then we're hoping we can get approval of those somewhat soon. And then we can, rather than go zeroing on a particular solution, maybe like have a bunch of proposals of option A, B, C, or whatever, pros and cons, and kind of go from there.
Just quickly, can we promote Joy and
Sorry, yeah.
Antoine, please?
I don't know how to do that, sorry.
I got it.
Oh, okay, there is also Antoine. Okay, okay. Yaris, you want to go next?
So there's been some major performance improvements in the past week. Raz Luvaton opened a PR for improving abort signal creation, which resulted in 76% to 2000% improvement on abort signal abort creation. And also it improved 20% all test runners, which is amazing. On top of that, Daniel Lemire worked on SimUTF and base64 improvements. I applied his changes to Node.js to ATOB, VTOA, and base64 operations, which resulted in really great numbers. So yeah, we are seeing some really great contributions.
That's amazing. Rafael?
Well, security release that were planned to yesterday was a bit delayed, and I'm doing that now. So it would be great if your Node versions in 1 hour.
Have fun. Okay. Any more announcements, or we can proceed with the public agenda? Okay, let's get started. So for the people that are viewing this, we decided that we're going to move all the core pack related discussion to the private section. So we discuss only the non-core pack related one, which means that we're starting with what is that? Proposal TSC 1524, proposal to reduce inactive collaborator duration. Yagiz, you want to briefly summarize it eventually?
Yes, so as you know that there has been some the security issues in the internet due to XZ, which made me realize that we should be a lot more strict and be concernful about performance. I'm not hinting towards that we are not, but I think we can do a little bit better. So I proposed reducing the inactive collaboration duration to 6 months. There's an open pull request. It didn't receive any request changes, but there are some people that raised concern saying that it should be 12 months, and I still think that it should be 6 months. So I propose talking about this in a reasonable time and then going for a vote rather than trying to convince each other and be strict, like be much more straight about the process.
Okay. So, personally, I've read your proposal that initially say that was 6 months now. Switching to 6 months, and now is 18, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, okay. My personal opinion, just taking personally, I agree that we should probably do that. I think that we should probably first 6 maybe is too less. I mean, with 6, I will be close to be removed by myself because I will be focusing on Milo for the last year in my specific case. Moreover, I would say also don't remove people without a warning. So my proposal would be let's make 12 months. And before doing that, we actually try to contact the person and say, are you still interested or not? Because we are going to remove it.
So we already
But
have a. Sorry, Rafael, you can go.
if that's a secured measure, I don't think if that will solve anyway.
Which part? Sorry, Rafael.
By like removing people, or if that's the intention is to be a secret measure, and people can also apply, or just say, okay, I want to stay at TSC, or I want to stay as a member, we won't remove them, and it won't solve the problem. Or actually, this is not a problem nowadays. We have a lot of secret measures, like even members, if they push to main directly without our commit tag, we will be alert, we will receive an alert. And when things go to main, it doesn't mean that it will be shipped. So I think the collaboration time, we can add that policy to reduce to 6 months, but it shouldn't be because of security.
Mm. Why do we have such a policy today? May I ask, just to understand?
I don't know.
So
I think if you promote Rich, he will explain.
Okay,
Yeah.
let me see if I can.
I can explain also. Yes, we've just had cases where we just kept piling on, and like people would get the commit bit and just never come back to the project. And with the possibility if those accounts got compromised or whatever, right? We just didn't want to have that commit bit just sitting out there. So we adopted the limit of, okay, if you're inactive for a certain period of time, then we can pull that. But with a fast track to come back and getting it back on if you wanted to start contributing again.
Okay, Yanis?
So my reasoning is the only security concern is that the collaborators has access to the CI, which means that with or without access, they can add the tag request CI and they can run their arbitrary code in all of the CI machines. So any collaborator at any time, they can inject a command that they can call spawn a process and run executions. Whether or not we are maintaining it, we are listening for Slack. These are not preventable measures, but these are more tracking kind of measures, so that we know these kinds of things happen. But in reality, any person that can run any code on those machines should be considered as a point of like a security concern, and reducing the duration plays a role. It doesn't solve the problem at all, but it plays a role to what the size of it and the people that we know and we don't forget. Because if yeah, anyways, yeah.
Rick?
So I just wanted to answer and James kind of sort of answered it, the question of why we have, this is talking about the policy of inactivity after 18 months.
Yep.
So the original policy was that, collaborators could only be removed by being either by voluntarily removing themselves or the TSC voting to remove them. So that, of course, meant that virtually nobody was ever removed. And once you had the commit bit, you had it forever. And for all we knew, there were people who had the commit bit who were, deceased or other things that would be sure indicators that they were never coming back. And there were some security concerns around CI, like Yagis was talking about, but also having 150 people with a commit bit or whatever gives the illusion of this massive team working on Node.js, when in fact the number of people who were actually doing routine work was a fraction of that size. And having a very large collaborator base also psychologically caused us as a team to be less interested in onboarding and recruiting new members. And I sort of created this automated job to flag people to, and I think initially it was 2 years time, because when I initially wrote it, anything shorter than that would have immediately opened a pull request to offboard like 50 people. So it started at 2 years, and I sort of incrementally brought it down to 18 months, and that's where it sort of stopped. I do think that the time frame should be shorter. I think like the things it looks for are: have you approved a pull request that's landed? Have you written any code that's are you the author of any commits that have landed? And that might be it, or there might be a third thing I can't remember. But the idea that you're engaged in the project, but you haven't bothered to review any pull requests, like even a typo fix in documentation after 18 months, strongly suggests that maybe you don't need the commit bit. And if you do need the commit bit, it's very easy to get it back. You just ask the TSC and they say yes 99% of the time. So that's kind of the history of it. And I do think that we need to be better about offboarding people as collaborators. And as a side result of that, maybe we can be better about offboarding people from the TSC. Right now, the only way it really happens automatically is if you fail to participate in multiple votes in a row. We don't vote very often, so that basically never happens. But there's sort of implicitly, if you get flagged by this collaborator thing that you haven't participated in 12 months, I imagine we would remove them as a TSC voting member at the same time. So that's all. I'll stop talking because I did come into this conversation partway through, but I have the historical knowledge, and James does, and a few other people do.
Okay, about myself, since I raised my hand, I just want to add on, remark on what Rafael said, that it's not really a security concern that people have a commit bit. It's not if the people acting are the people that we elected as collaborators. But the thing is that leaving people inactive with a commit bit, if they lose their access for some reason, somebody steals their access, I mean, unwanted people might play with our CI and so forth. So it's actually a real security risk, not for the people that we actually nominated, but for their access, just the fact that they can actually have the commit bit. Also, your concern about being more strict when nominating people. I mean, you already scrutinize what they've done in the project, so I don't think we can do any better. And most of the time, that the people that we bring in is people that we somehow personally, and bear with me with the quotes, we personally know, so we don't really have a problem with trust. It's but probably a problem with how they handle this access. So unless we start telling people we enforce the two-factor authentication, for instance, for everything, that might also be another way. The commit bit is a security point of failure, not the person, the bit, the permission itself. That's it for me. Richard?
Yeah, we already require two-factor authentication turned. I think GitHub actually switched that on for everyone anyway now. So the two-factor authentication is already there. I just want to point out that, yeah, whenever we discuss about this, the security for Node is actually in layers. So, yeah, it doesn't directly compromise releases. I mean, there is a path potentially that if you have access to a compromised collaborator account, there is a sort of path that could end up with something going into a release, but it requires passing through several layers of scrutiny. And to be honest, if we don't catch things in those, in those layers, then it doesn't really matter who has the commit bit. So just being able to write to Node, the GitHub repository, doesn't necessarily mean that your change will end up in a release. But yeah, it's layers. So yeah, there are particular layers. having the commit bit probably is a sort of a security risk, but it's not the ultimate yes, no, ultimate sort of compromise thing. So there are other things in place that we have to try and prevent, things slipping through the net.
I see. Robert?
I mean, reducing the time, I guess, doesn't make the security worse. And reducing it to 12 months, is anyone opposed to that? Can't we just do something like that and then we're good?
I'm opposed to 12 months because I don't want to have the same discussion in a year and then reduce it to 6 months. If we're going to make a decision, I am interested in reducing to 6 months. And there are concerns regarding there are people that think 12 or 9 months is a perfect thing. So, yeah.
Moshe, you're next.
Yeah, so I just propose we vote on the number since, as Robert said, we want to make processes simpler. There seems to be consensus on shortening the duration. Let's just come up with a number everyone agrees on. I proposed 9 months since 6 months can be short for as raised by people. 12 months might not be enough, but I'm okay with either 9 months or 12 months.
9 months sounds good to me as well. To be honest,
Is there any opposition towards 9 months? I can change my PR to 9 months right now, and we can land it, and I can open another PR for 6 months, and we can vote that.
No,
And I think it
months.
might be.
I would say if we land the 9 month, let's keep it for a while and see what happens, and then eventually we can revisit later, rather than voting.
Let's do this. Is anyone opposed to 9 months?
Me.
Okay. Do you want shorter or longer?
12 months sounds good to me.
Okay. So one objection for 9 months, prefer really 12. Any other objections to 9 months? Okay. How do we deal with the objection? Here, is there any other compromise, any other approach?
Is there any objection to 12 months? Just asking.
I have objection to 12 months. It's too high.
Okay, Geoffrey?
I was just gonna say, like, we should probably do this in phases anyway, like do it to 12 months because we'll have to like offboard the people who are affected by that, and then if we're gonna go further down, then we do it 9 or 6 months. So, like if we could, like, Yagiz, maybe you could be okay with doing 12 months as a first step, and then we follow it up in a few weeks with 6 months or whatever, even if we have to vote on that. But that way we're not just, doing one big culling of people.
So if the general consensus was towards 12, then I would recommend doing that. But I already compromised from 6 months, but initially I want 6 months. So I would push for 9 months then to find the common ground. But yeah.
So how about as a proposal, we start by lowering it to 12. Let's give it a month, 2 months, and then we can lower it to 9.
Let's go for that.
Then will Rafael block 9 months?
Yeah, probably.
Well,
Then
we can vote. We can vote on it.
Postponing the voting then. Like if you are postponing
it's fine.
Yeah, but we are reducing it. Current value is 18 months. I don't know why you should oppose to 12. We are reducing it anyway.
Sorry, folks.
Okay.
Consider just one thing. Consider that I'm fine with either 9 and 12. I don't really care, honestly. We can look for unanimous vote all the times. It's impossible this way.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's do it this way.
I'm going. Sorry, James. I will reduce it to 12 months. I will change the PR. Please review. Let's land it in a month. Let's talk. Then I will have a month to convince Rafael that. If not, then we can go for vote. Anything is better than 18 right now, and I'm compromising more than I should, but that's on me, I guess.
Yagis, don't get reported for stalking, please. But okay, let's do that. Okay, so we're fine on that. Let's move on the next item then. Thank you, Fox. Next item is I forgot
The local storage, I think.
local storage. Yes, add experimental local storage, which was based on SQLite, if I'm not mistaken, the internally, right? Can somebody summarize what are the problems here? Because Colin is not here, so.
I wasn't so involved with this, but basically there were some objections that weren't quite relevant for the PR, and the collaborator refused to remove them. And TSC was way too slow to take action and vote on it, and therefore Colin closed it. So I'm just I don't think there are any valid objections left on that PR, so I would just propose that we just vote here that the old objection is overridden, and this PR, the new PR, can land unless a new objection arises.
So to summarize, the only objection is that they don't want SQLite to be included as dependency in Node.
Well, or the feature. They were saying that like, yeah, we don't care that other runtimes have this. We should have. We don't care.
I see. Moshe, sorry, go for it.
Yeah, so this isn't exactly an objection, rather a request for another phase. But there were concerns about how one can specify where the data will be saved in the disk or in memory. But I don't think that should block the PO.
I think that's good to put as a comment on the PR and see if Colin wishes to address it.
It was commented.
Yeah,
Okay.
he replied to that, I think this morning or last night, saying that like, yeah, the PR as is isn't ready to land because there are like unresolved like technical notes like that. But that he didn't want to spend any more time on it without some kind of signal from the TSC that they wouldn't be opposed to the PR in principle.
I have a technical question here. Do we absolutely need to be SQLite, I mean, or similar in order to land this thing? Or for instance, like Moshe said, we can write on disk, we can dump a JSON on the disk or whatever. I mean, there are other challenges there, but it would be that doable, or we do want to avoid that for any reason here?
It doesn't have to be SQLite. I think that's probably the better implementation. A lot easier using SQLite.
It's an implementation detail that's hidden from the user, so it can always be replaced if we want.
Okay. Well, it depends because it might be considered some bare measure to change the backend storage probably. Even though it's an experimental, so we can technically change at any time, but we are good citizens, so we never actually change it. But that's another topic. In theory, we could. So, I mean, that's also one thing to consider. If we assume that if it's experimental, we break it at any time, then SQLite can go in, because as soon as we say, oh, we made a mistake, we expect the next Ember minor and we drop it. If we instead say, oh, we have it, now it's going to be there forever because experimental is not really experimental, we have a big problem on how we define experimental there, in my opinion.
So but I agree with you that experimental is not experimental in the way we would like it to be, but it's always possible to do an automatic migration that we then remove at end of life for that specific version.
Yeah.
So there's ways around that.
Richard?
Yeah, I thought I remember that we split experimental into stages or something. There's something in the documentation for like different stages of experimental. So there's got to be some level in there that sets expectations as to how likely it might break in like, you know, as it's been developed. But I think, yeah, just to reiterate, I think the main question for us here was the principal thing. Yeah, there are technical things that may need to be debated in the PR, and the PR itself is not ready. But I think Colin just wasn't. He wanted an indication that this, even with technical tweaks, that it might land in the future, rather than no, this is never going to land, therefore it's not worth spending any time on. So I think at this point we're just looking at, do we want do we want this feature in Node? However it's implemented, and then the implementation itself is then subject to normal technical review on the whatever PR is just deemed to be in a landable state. I think the current one, it's still in draft because it's there are known question mark there are no things that need to be ironed out.
Yeah, I was just gonna reiterate the exact same thing. I was basically, does anyone here object to local storage landing, just in general, regardless of how it's implemented? Having that API available, anybody object to it
And session storage.
in session storage? Okay,
Nope.
so hearing no objections, the inference is we're all fine with it being there, and the PR should move forward as long as the technical issues get resolved.
Actually, there is another question. Do we object to SQLite being brought in as a dependency node? Which is actually even a good thing because we might reuse it later for other things, honestly.
I think at least as an internal dependency, it seems fine. I think
Yeah.
there should probably be more discussion if we ever want to expose it to users, but that's not being proposed yet.
No, that's not relevant at the moment.
That's a completely different conversation. Yeah.
Yeah, my only concern is like it's another dependency to have security concerns, right? But that's fine.
I mean, let's increase our supply chain. Why not? Okay, we're fine then. Okay, Fox, I think we are done with the public part. Anything because we greet the people at home?
Yeah, I just think someone should comment on Colin's pull request,
Okay.
updating. There were no TSC objections.
I would make it a little stronger. Not that there were no TSC objections. I would say that the TSC discussed and is fine with it landing.
Yep.
Kind of more of a positive stamp on it than a
Would
nobody
you comment
objected.
there?
Can, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Next up, Fox, we're done with the public part, so people at
All right,
home